The city was glowing outside the glass, but inside the penthouse the air felt heavy. Emily sat at the long dining table, one hand resting on her 6-month bump, pretending her back wasn't aching. Overhead, a crystal chandelier threw warm light on the white plates, crystal glasses, and carefully arranged food that no one really wanted to eat. Across from her, Richard lifted a glass of red wine and smiled for his parents, the polished millionaire they loved to show off. His Rolex flashed when he moved his wrist, catching the light every time he gestured about, closing another project on Park Avenue. To anyone else, he looked like the dream husband, the kind of man who made life easy. Emily knew better. She watched the way his jaw tightened when the maid was a second late. She saw how his eyes flicked to her phone when it buzzed in her purse, as if she had no right to a life outside of him. Her own iPhone sat face down, muted, because he hated distractions at the table. She had learned not to argue. Arguing always came back to her, not respecting him. "Emily, are you eating enough?" Richard's mother asked, her voice sweet but sharp. "The baby needs more than salad." Emily forced a small smile. "I'm fine, really. The doctor says everything looks good." Richard's father barely looked at her. "Richard, tell us about that new building. The one with the view of the skyline. Sounds like a real winner." The conversation slid right past her, like it always did. They asked about his deals, his plans, the markets. No one asked how she was sleeping, if she was scared, if the baby kicked so hard at night she couldn't breathe. Sarah, her older sister, sat next to her, watching quietly. Sarah's eyes were the only pair in the room that ever seemed to really see her. Sarah leaned closer and whispered, "You okay, Em?" Emily nodded too quickly. "Yeah. Just tired." Her fingers pressed against her belly. The baby moved, a gentle flutter, like a reminder she wasn't alone, even if the room made her feel like an unwanted guest in her own life. She used to have a job at a little elementary school in Brooklyn. Children knew her name, hugged her legs when she walked in, drew her pictures. Then Richard had told her, smiling, "You don't need to work anymore. Let me take care of you." It had sounded like love at the time. Now it sounded like a locked door. "Emily." Richard's voice cut through her thoughts. "You saw the email from the lawyer, right?" Her heart skipped. She looked up. His eyes were calm, but there was something hard behind them. I don't know which one you mean," she said. He shrugged, taking another sip of wine. "We'll talk later." Sarah's eyes narrowed. She had heard that tone before, on the phone with Emily late at night, when Emily tried not to cry. She reached under the table and gave Emily's hand a little squeeze. Emily tried to steady her breathing. Suddenly, Richard's iPhone lit up on the table, buzzing loudly against the wood. The sound made everyone look. On the screen, just for a second before he grabbed it, Emily saw a name she had never seen there before, a woman's name. His face changed, a quick flicker of alarm, then irritation. He stood up, forcing a light laugh. "Excuse me, business call." His mother said, "Put it on speaker, dear. We're all family here." Richard froze for half a second, then pressed accept and, under the weight of their curious eyes, put the phone on speaker. A woman's voice spilled into the room, shaking, breathless, on the edge of tears. "Richard, they're threatening me," the woman sobbed. "You promised me she'd sign. If she doesn't sign, we're both in trouble. You said you'd make her sign tonight." Emily's blood ran cold as every face at the table slowly turned toward her. And in that thick, stunned silence, Emily realized whatever was about to happen to her had been planned long before she sat down to this family dinner. Before Richard, Emily's life had been small but steady. She rented a modest apartment in Brooklyn with peeling paint and noisy neighbors. But it was hers. Her mornings started with the smell of cheap coffee and the sound of little shoes squeaking down school hallways. She knew every child's name, their favorite color, the way some of them needed an extra smile just to make it through the day. She wore simple clothes, bought on sale, and carried a worn canvas tote instead of a designer purse. At night she graded papers at her tiny kitchen table, a second-hand laptop open, a cup of tea growing cold beside her. It wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful. She liked who she was in that life. Then she met Richard. He came to the school as part of some charity program, shaking hands with the principal, smiling for photos, promising to give back to the community. He picked Emily out almost immediately. Later, she would realize he had a talent for spotting gentle souls who would bend rather than break. He walked her to the subway, carrying her tote as if it were something expensive. He asked her questions, listened, like every word mattered. Their first date was at a small restaurant in Manhattan, where she felt underdressed and shy. He pulled out her chair, ordered for her, told her she deserved more than worrying about rent and lesson plans. "You're special, Emily," he had said, touching her hand. "You shouldn't have to work yourself to death. Let me take care of you." It was easy to fall for him. The city outside was bright and alive, and inside his car, his world felt warm and safe. When he drove her home in his Mercedes and waited until she was inside the building, she felt chosen, protected. Her friends teased her about dating a movie character. When he proposed, it was on a rooftop overlooking the Manhattan skyline, fairy lights strung everywhere. He dropped to one knee, holding a ring that sparkled so much she had to squint. She cried, said yes, believed that this was the beginning of a fairy tale. The changes came slowly after the wedding. "Why are you still working?" he asked one evening, loosening his tie, looking tired. "You look exhausted all the time. Quit. We don't need your salary. You can focus on the home. On our future kids." She hesitated, but he hugged her, kissed her hair, told her it was for her own good. Within a few months, she turned in her resignation at the school. Her principal hugged her, asked if she was sure. Emily smiled, told herself this was what grown-up love looked like. Then came the rules, subtle at first. "Do you really need to see your friends that often? They don't understand our life. Why do you need your own bank account? It's simpler if everything goes through mine. I don't like when you go out without telling me exactly where." The first time he raised his voice, she was 3 months pregnant, standing in the kitchen holding a grocery bag. He didn't like that she had spent money on a baby blanket without asking. The slam of his palm against the counter made her jump. Later, he apologized, brought flowers, said it was stress. She forgave him, but apologies started to feel thinner, and the moments of anger lasted longer. A glass thrown against a wall, his fingers gripping her arm too hard, always followed by soft words and promises that it would never happen again. Now, sitting at his family's table, listening to another woman cry through his phone about making her sign, Emily felt all those moments stack on top of each other like proof she had never wanted to see. For the first time, she wondered if walking away from that tiny Brooklyn classroom had been the moment she walked straight into a cage. The voice on the phone trembled, but the words were sharp. "Richard, you promised," the woman sobbed. "You said once she signs the power of attorney, everything would be safe. If she doesn't sign, they'll come after us both. I'm not going to prison for you." Emily's fork slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the plate. No one moved to pick it up. Richard lunged for the phone, snatching it up and walking a few steps away from the table, but it was on speaker. The damage was done. Every syllable echoed through the dining room. "Olivia, calm down," he hissed, turning his back. "This is not the time." "It's already too late," she cried. "They're watching the accounts. You said tonight. You said you'd force her to sign tonight. If she doesn't, everything you moved looks suspicious." Sarah's gaze shot to Emily. "Power of attorney?" she whispered. "What is she talking about?" Emily swallowed hard. A memory floated up. An email from Richard's lawyer a few days earlier. "Just some paperwork," Richard had said, brushing it off. "Standard stuff in case something happens to me. I'll explain later." She had meant to read it carefully, but pregnancy fatigue and his impatient tone had made her put it off. Now her stomach twisted. Richard ended the call abruptly, his jaw clenched. He turned back to the table, trying to paste on his old charming smile. It didn't fit as well anymore. "My apologies," he said tightly. "A colleague. Overly dramatic." "No," Sarah said, her voice low but steady. "That didn't sound like a colleague." Richard's mother cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Maybe we should all just focus on dinner. This isn't—" "Her name is Olivia," Sarah cut in. "You didn't deny it." Emily looked at her husband. Who is she? Something flickered in his eyes, annoyance, then calculation. She's my assistant, he said finally. She has a habit of overreacting. And she knows nothing about our private finances, so don't get ideas. But he was lying. Emily had lived long enough with this man to recognize the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth, the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. Behind her, the whole picture began to assemble itself, piece by piece. The late nights at the office, the business trips extended by an extra day, the sudden insistence that she sign things without asking too many questions. The way he had blocked her from viewing certain banking apps on his phone, saying, "You'll just get stressed, Em." What she didn't know, but the audience would see in quick flashes, was how deep it went. Olivia, in his sleek Park Avenue office, leaning over his shoulder as he moved money from one account to another. Him explaining how they'd shift assets into shell companies before the market turned, how everything would look clean once certain legal documents were signed. And among those documents was one quiet, deadly paper. A transfer of power giving Richard full control over any shared property and accounts, so he could sell, move, or hide assets without needing his wife's consent. "Emily," Richard said now, his tone turning cool and businesslike. "We talked about this. The documents I sent you are for our protection. I need you to sign them. Tonight." Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. "You said they were just in case," she whispered. "And they are." He smiled thinly. "But timing matters. There are eyes on my company right now. Rivals, regulators. You signing tonight keeps me and this family safe." "This family?" Sarah repeated. "Or you and that woman?" His gaze snapped to her. "Stay out of this, Sarah. You don't understand how any of this works." "I understand one thing," she said. "You're asking my pregnant sister to sign legal papers she hasn't read, because some woman on the phone is afraid of going to prison." Emily felt the baby move again, harder this time, like a warning. And across the table, as Richard reached for his leather folder, she understood with a cold, painful clarity that she was not being asked to sign for protection, she was being set up to be left with nothing. Richard placed the folder on the table with a soft thud that sounded much louder than it should have. The crystal glasses rattled slightly. Emily stared at the leather cover as if it were something alive, something dangerous. "Let's not make a scene," he said, though his voice carried that edge that always meant a scene was coming whether she wanted it or not. "We're all adults here. We can handle a few signatures without turning this into a soap opera." He opened the folder, slid out a thick stack of papers, and laid them in front of her. The top page was crowded with dense text, long paragraphs of legal language that made her eyes blur. At the bottom, a line waited for her signature, her name already typed neatly underneath. "What is it exactly?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "As I said," he replied, almost bored, "a power of attorney and some related documents. It just clarifies who handles financial decisions if something happens to me. It's standard for someone in my position." Sarah leaned over, squinting at the page. "This doesn't look standard," she muttered. "Emily, don't sign anything tonight." Richard's expression hardened. "You're not her lawyer, Sarah." "No," she shot back. "I'm her sister, and I have eyes." Emily tried to read, but the words swam. "Authorize, transfer, dispose of, without further consent." Her hands shook. "Why the rush?" she asked. "Why tonight?" Richard smiled a thin, cold smile. "Because regulators don't wait, Emily. Because my enemies don't wait. I need everything tidy, clean, unified. I built this life for us, and I won't let anyone tear it down." "By unified," Sarah said, tapping the page, "you mean she gives you control of everything shared?" "Our parents may not be lawyers, but I know enough. Emily, if you sign this, he can move every dollar, sell every property, and you won't be able to stop him." Their mother, sitting quietly until now, finally spoke. "Richard, she's carrying your child. Surely some things can wait." He turned on her with a look that made Emily flinch. "This is exactly the problem. Everyone in this room thinks with feelings. I think with facts. The fact is, my company is under scrutiny. I need flexibility. This is just paperwork." He picked up a black Mont Blanc pen, uncapped it with a soft click, and placed it in Emily's hand. His fingers closed over hers, a little too tight, steering her hand toward the signature line. Her chest tightened. "You're hurting me," she whispered. He didn't loosen his grip. "Stop being dramatic. You always do this when something important needs to be done. You freeze, you cry. I don't have time for that tonight." Tears pricked her eyes, more from fear than pain. "Richard, I'm scared. I don't understand all this. Let me talk to a lawyer. Let me read it properly tomorrow." "We don't have tomorrow," he snapped, voice rising. "You sign now. You're my wife. Your job is to stand by me, not question me in front of everyone." Sarah stood up, chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Her job is not to be your shield while you hide money and cheat on her." Silence crashed over the room. Richard's parents looked stunned, but they didn't deny it. Their eyes slid away. Emily stared at the page, at the line where her name sat waiting. The baby pushed against her ribs, a solid, insistent pressure. Her hand trembled above the paper, pen hovering, ink ready. Richard leaned closer, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous murmur only she and Sarah could hear. "If you don't sign, things will get very bad for you, Emily. You'll be on your own, pregnant, with nothing. Think about that before you make a stupid choice." Her throat tightened. For years, she had bent, given in, told herself it was easier to keep the peace. But tonight, surrounded by people who saw too much and said too little, something inside her began slowly, stubbornly, to stand up. Her fingers loosened around the pen, and just as she let it fall back onto the table, a sound from the hallway, heavy footsteps, and a firm knock at the door told her that whatever happened next would change all of their lives forever. The knock at the door echoed through the penthouse like a warning, but Richard ignored it. His eyes were locked on Emily, dark with frustration and something colder fear. He reached for the pen again, sliding it across the table toward her as if nothing had happened. "Pick it up," he ordered quietly, but everyone heard the threat under the words. Emily's heart hammered. She could feel every pulse in her fingertips. She pulled her hand back into her lap, gripping the fabric of her dress. "I said I'm not signing tonight," she whispered. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Richard's face twisted. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Then louder. "You embarrassed me in front of my family and you think that's acceptable?" His mother opened her mouth, maybe to calm him, maybe to smooth things over like she always did, but he cut her off with a glare. Conversations in the Cole family had always gone one direction. Richard spoke, others obeyed. He snatched the papers off the table and slapped them back down in front of her, with a crack that made everyone jump. "You're signing," he hissed. "You think being pregnant gives you special privileges? That you can just refuse when everything I built is on the line?" Emily flinched. The baby jolted inside her, reacting to the tension. She pressed a hand to her belly, trying to steady her breathing. Sarah stepped between them. "If you touch her again, I swear." Richard scoffed. "What? You'll do what? You think anyone will listen to you? You don't even make enough to hire a decent lawyer." Sarah's face burned red, but she didn't back down. Then Richard grabbed Emily's wrist. Hard. Too hard. She gasped, instinctively pulling back, but he held her tighter. "I'm done negotiating. Sign the damned papers." Emily tried to twist away. "Richard, stop, please." His fingers dug deeper, forcing her hand forward. The table rattled. Her chair scraped. Her breath hitched in pain. Richard's father cleared his throat awkwardly. "Son, maybe this isn't—" "Stay out of it," Richard snapped. Emily's eyes blurred. The pressure on her wrist was sharp, bruising. The baby pushed again, harder. "Richard, let go," Sarah shouted. He didn't. Instead, he jerked Emily's arm toward him, forcing her upper body halfway across the table. Plates shifted, a glass toppled, wine spilling like dark blood across the white tablecloth. "Stop resisting," he growled. "You never listen. You never do what's asked. All you do is complain, cry, argue. Let her go." Sarah's voice cracked through the room like lightning. Richard froze just long enough for Sarah to yank Emily's arm free. Emily stumbled back into her chair, clutching her belly, breathing hard. Richard glared at both sisters, hatred flickering deep in his eyes. "You want drama?" he barked, grabbing the papers again. "Fine. You want honesty? I'm done pretending." He pointed at Emily. "I'm divorcing you. Tonight. I already told my lawyer. These papers were the first step, but if you won't cooperate, I'll take what I can and cut you out." Emily's blood went cold. He stepped closer to her, voice low with venom. "Pregnant or not, you are nothing without me." The words hit her like a slap. Her throat tightened, but she refused to cry, not this time. Behind her, Sarah whispered, "Don't let him break you, Em." Richard scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Break her? She's already broken. That's why I had to find someone stronger, someone who actually supports me, someone who isn't a burden." He didn't say Olivia's name, but everyone knew. Emily felt something inside her, something small, fragile, long ignored, finally crack open. She sat up straighter. "I'm not signing," she said softly, but clearly. The entire room went silent. Richard's fists clenched. His breathing sharpened. His face reddened with fury he could no longer hide. And then, a second round of pounding on the door rattled the entire penthouse, followed by a deep voice shouting, "NYPD, open up." Emily's pulse roared in her ears. NYPD? Why? Had something happened? Was this connected to Olivia's frantic call? Richard whipped his head toward the front door, his face shifting from anger to panic in a split second. His shoulders tightened, his jaw locked. His fingers twitched, as if calculating whether he should run or bluff. The knock came again, harder, louder, shaking the walls. "Nipped, open the door," Sarah whispered. "Emily, something's wrong, really wrong." Emily held her belly, trying to steady her breathing. Her wrist throbbed where Richard had squeezed it. She felt the baby flutter anxiously inside her. Everything in her told her something huge, something irreversible was unfolding. Richard's father stood up shakily. "Son, what? What is going on?" Richard didn't answer. He spun toward his office. Nobody move. He rushed down the hallway and disappeared inside the glass-walled room. A few seconds later, drawers slammed, paper rustled, and the clicking of a keyboard echoed sharply. "He's trying to hide something," Sarah muttered. "This is bad." Emily knew it too. She had ignored the signs for so long, documents she wasn't allowed to see, passwords changed without warning, late-night calls, anger that ignited faster each week, the bruises she covered with makeup, the fear that settled into her bones like cold. She had told herself it was stress. Pregnancy hormones. Love gone stale. Anything but what it truly was. A man with something to hide. And now the truth was pounding at the door. "Nipped, open the door now, or we will enter by force." Richard's mother pressed a hand to her chest. "Richard, come here. What are they talking about?" But he didn't answer. Emily looked at Sarah. "I'm scared." "I know," Sarah whispered, brushing a tear from her cheek. "But whatever this is, it's not your fault. Remember that." The pounding stopped. For one heartbeat, silence filled the room. Then, a deep mechanical click echoed through the hallway. Someone was unlocking the main door from the outside. Richard burst out of his office then, holding his phone in a trembling hand. "Nobody say a word," he hissed, pointing at his family like he was commanding employees. "I'll handle this." Handle what? Emily wondered. What had he done, and why was she part of the mess? The door swung open with a forceful shove, hitting the wall. 4 officers stepped inside first, vests marked NYPD, hands near their holsters. Behind them came 2 detectives in plain clothes, badges out. One of them, a tall man with gray at his temples, spoke in a firm, steady voice. "Richard Cole?" Richard raised his chin. "Yes. What is the meaning of this? Do you know who I am? This is a private residence. You can't just..." Detective Mark Harris stepped forward, reading from a document. "Richard Cole, you are under investigation for financial fraud, falsifying legal documents, asset concealment, and coercive control. We have a warrant to search the premises." Every word hit Emily like a blow. Fraud, concealment, coercive control. Coercive control. She knew those words. She had read them in pamphlets at clinics, in articles about emotional and financial abuse. Detective Harris continued. We also have grounds to believe you attempted to force your pregnant wife to sign a fraudulent legal document tonight, involving the transfer of jointly held assets. Emily's breath caught. They knew. Someone had told them. Someone had warned them. Richard laughed, a brittle, hollow sound. This is absurd. You're trusting rumors from jealous employees. My wife will tell you herself, Emily. Tell them. His eyes bore into her. A command. A threat. A plea. All tangled together. Emily's lips trembled. She looked at Sarah, at her parents, at the officers. Her voice felt stuck, buried under months of fear and silence. Emily, Richard snapped. Tell them. She opened her mouth, and the words finally rose. I won't lie for you. Richard's eyes widened with pure, wild fury. Detective Harris nodded once. Mr. Cole, turn around and put your hands behind your back. No, Richard growled, stepping back. You can't do this. She's confused. She's emotional. She has no idea what she's talking about. But the officers closed in. Emily reached for Sarah's hand, gripping it tightly. Her whole body shook, but for the first time in years, it wasn't from fear. It was the first breath of freedom. The room erupted into chaos. Richard's mother cried out, stumbling to her feet. His father sputtered. There must be some mistake. The officers moved with practiced calm, forming a semicircle around Richard as he backed toward the fireplace like a cornered animal. Don't touch me, he barked, raising his hands. I said don't touch me. You're making a huge mistake. I have lawyers, powerful lawyers. I'll end your careers if you put your hands on me. Detective Harris didn't blink. Put your hands behind your back. But then another voice echoed from the hallway. A voice Emily knew only from the speakerphone. A woman's voice. Shaking. Familiar. Just do what they say, Richard. Everyone turned. Olivia Hayes stepped into the penthouse. Emily sucked in a sharp breath. There she was, the assistant, the whispered name on Richard's phone, the trembling voice begging him to make her sign. But Olivia looked nothing like the confident young woman Emily had imagined. Her hair was messy, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She walked toward the officers, almost stumbling. Detective Harris nodded at her. Miss Hayes, thank you for cooperating. Richard froze. Olivia, what are you doing here? She didn't look at him. She stared at the floor as though afraid of what she might see if she raised her eyes. In her hand was a folder, a thick one, stuffed with papers. Emily's stomach dropped. Olivia swallowed hard. I told them everything. Richard's face contorted into disbelief. Everything? Olivia, sweetheart, what are you talking about? She flinched at the word sweetheart. Like it burned. You said I'd be protected, she whispered. You said people like us never face consequences. But when they showed me the emails, the transfers, all the documents with my signature on them, she finally looked up, eyes filled with despair. You used me. You made me sign things I didn't understand. You said it was temporary, that paperwork didn't matter. But they told me if I didn't cooperate, I'd go to prison. She handed the folder to Detective Harris, who accepted it with a nod. These, she said, voice trembling, are copies of every document Richard had me move, every account he used, every shell company, every transfer he forced me to approve. Richard's jaw dropped. Olivia, stop. You're emotional. You don't know what you're saying. Her voice cracked. I know exactly what I'm saying. She turned to Emily. Not with cruelty, not with jealousy, but with guilt. I thought I was helping him. I thought he loved me. But I was just another tool. Emily couldn't speak. The betrayal, the deception, the danger, it all swirled in her mind. But seeing Olivia now, fragile and broken, Emily felt something unexpected. Not pity, but recognition. Richard had used them both. Detective Harris flipped open the folder, scanning the papers. This confirms everything. Mr. Cole, you are being charged with financial fraud, money laundering, coercion, attempted asset concealment, abusive conduct toward a pregnant spouse, and conspiracy to falsify legal documents. The officers moved in. Richard finally snapped. You betrayed me, he screamed at Olivia. You stupid girl. You think they'll protect you? Without me, you are nothing." Olivia's lip trembled. Emily stepped forward not to comfort her, but to stand between her and Richard's rage. "No," Emily said quietly. "She's not nothing, and neither am I." Richard lunged forward, but two officers grabbed him, slamming him against the wall. He howled, "I will destroy you all. You hear me? I will destroy." Detective Harris read him his rights over the shouting, and Olivia sank into a chair, shaking uncontrollably. Emily watched Richard, still thrashing, still furious, still convinced the world revolved around him, and she realized this was the first time she had ever seen him powerless. The handcuffs clicked shut around Richard's wrists, the metal glinting beneath the chandelier. For a man who lived his entire life believing he was untouchable, seeing him restrained looked almost surreal. He jerked against the officer's grip, but they held him firmly, guiding him toward the entrance with unhurried authority. His parents trailed behind helplessly, calling his name, begging the officers to consider a misunderstanding, still refusing to believe their son could do anything wrong. But the truth was already out, and the consequences were unfolding faster than Richard could control. Detective Harris turned to the remaining officers. "Begin the search. Everything on the warrant list. Home office, safe, electronic devices, financial records. Log every document and every file." Emily's breath caught. They were about to uncover everything Richard had been hiding, all the lies, all the secrets, all the money he tried to move out of her reach. The officers moved quickly. Two headed for his office. One to the bedroom, another to the safe behind the painting Emily didn't even know could be moved. Sarah whispered, Are you okay?" Emily nodded numbly. I don't know." Her wrist ached where Richard had grabbed her. Her heart still raced as if it hadn't caught up with the fact that she was no longer the one being cornered. Across the room, Olivia sat trembling in a chair. A paramedic, called by one of the officers, crouched beside her, checking her pulse. Emily could hear fragments of her voice, soft, cracking, apologizing to no one in particular. Emily wanted to look away, but she couldn't. This was the woman Richard had thrown his marriage away for. This was the woman he had used as a pawn. This was the woman who finally helped take him down. "Emily," Detective Harris said softly, approaching her, "we'll need a statement from you. But not tonight. Go home with your sister. Rest. You've been through enough." Emily blinked, tears gathering. "Is he really going to prison?" Harris nodded. "His accounts are frozen. The evidence is overwhelming. Fraud on this scale carries serious federal charges. He won't talk his way out of this." Emily exhaled shakily. She had waited so long for anyone to believe her, to see what he was capable of behind closed doors. Now, watching officers pull out boxes of files and hard drives, she finally felt the weight lifting from her chest. A female officer approached her with a gentle voice. "Ma'am, are you safe? Is your baby okay?" Emily touched her belly, feeling the steady rhythm of little kicks. "Yes," she whispered. "We're okay." Sarah wrapped her arm around her. "You're more than okay. You're free." In the corner, Richard's mother sobbed into her hands. "This can't be happening. My son would never. He's a good man." Detective Harris faced her calmly. "Ma'am, good men don't force their pregnant wives to sign fraudulent legal documents. They don't funnel money through shell companies. And they don't threaten the women carrying their children." Richard's mother shook her head violently, but she had no argument left. The truth stood in front of her in boxes, files, and a son in handcuffs. Suddenly, Richard's voice echoed from the hallway. "You think you've beaten me?" he screamed as officers pushed him toward the elevator. "I'll get out. I'll come back. Emily, do you hear me? I own you." Emily flinched, but she didn't hide. She stepped to the edge of the hallway, Sarah still beside her. For the first time, she looked him dead in the eyes without fear. "No," she said softly. "You don't." The elevator doors closed on his furious face. The penthouse fell silent. A silence so deep, so clean, so unfamiliar it felt like the first breath of a new life. Sarah squeezed her hand. "Emily, it's over." Emily looked around the penthouse that had always felt more like a museum than a home. Her home wasn't here. It never had been. She placed her hand over her belly. "We're leaving," she whispered. "Tonight," as the officers continued their search, as Richard was taken away. As the weight of years lifted from her shoulders, Emily finally understood that this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. The moment the elevator doors sealed shut, taking Richard and his rage out of her sight, Emily felt her knees weaken. The adrenaline that had been keeping her upright for the last hour drained from her body like water spilling from a cracked cup. Sarah caught her just as her legs buckled. Hey, stay with me," Sarah whispered, guiding her to the nearest sofa. Emily collapsed onto the cushions, both hands instinctively flying to her belly. The baby kicked hard, reacting to her panic. Her breathing turned shallow, uneven. The room blurred around her. Sarah cupped her face gently. Look at me." Deep breaths. But the tears came before the breaths did. Big, hot, uncontrollable tears that soaked into her dress. For so long she'd held everything inside, every insult, every bruise, every night spent sitting on the bathroom floor because she didn't want him to see her crying. Now it all spilled out of her in messy waves. She couldn't stop. "I was so stupid," she choked out. "I thought he loved me. I thought he loved our baby. I thought if I just tried harder, just kept quiet, things would get better." Sarah pulled her close. "You weren't stupid. You were in love. And he knew exactly how to use that." Emily sobbed harder. "I kept thinking it was my fault, that I wasn't enough, that if I were stronger or prettier or less emotional, he'd treat me better." Sarah's voice was firm. "Listen to me. None of this is your fault. What he did is on him, all of it." But Emily couldn't hear anything over the pounding guilt in her own head. What if I messed up the baby? What if the stress, what if— "Stop," Sarah said, gripping her shoulders. "Your baby is safe. You are safe. That's all that matters." Across the room, officers continued packing evidence, their voices low and professional. Olivia sat in the corner, wrapped in a blanket, still shaking. Richard's mother cried quietly, and his father just stared at the floor, looking 10 years older. But none of it mattered to Emily, not now. The weight of years pressed down on her chest. Years of being silenced, years of being told she was lucky, years of living beside a monster dressed as a husband. Her breath hitched violently, her chest tightening. Sarah called out to the nearest paramedic. "She can't breathe, please." The paramedic rushed over, kneeling. "Ma'am, look at me. I need you to slow your breathing. You're hyperventilating." Deep breath in and out. Emily tried, but the sobs kept breaking through. She felt humiliated crying in front of strangers, officers, even Olivia, but she couldn't stop. The dam had broken. She had been holding everything inside for too long. The paramedic kept his voice calm. "You're safe now. Nothing can hurt you. Just breathe. One breath at a time." Emily gasped, chest rising and falling in sharp, uneven motion. She closed her eyes and tried to focus on the baby kicking. One kick, 2 kicks. A little life reminding her she wasn't alone. Another officer approached gently. "Mrs. Cole, do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight?" Emily nodded weakly. "My sister's place." Sarah squeezed her hand. "You're coming with me, Em. Tonight and as long as you need." Slowly, painfully, Emily's breathing began to steady. The sobs softened. The room stopped spinning. Her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. "Sarah," she whispered, "what am I going to do?" Her sister kissed her forehead. "Everything you couldn't do before." Emily blinked. "Like what?" "Start over," Sarah said. "This is the worst night of your life, I know, but it's also the first night you're free." Emily leaned into her sister's shoulder, letting the words settle. The baby moved again, gentle this time, like reassurance. But deep in her chest, past the fear and the pain, a new feeling stirred. It was the tiniest spark of hope, and it terrified her just as much as it comforted her. The officers began carrying out boxes, hard drives, folders, laptops, binders. The penthouse that once looked like a magazine spread now looked like a crime scene. And maybe it always had been. Emily watched them move through rooms she used to tiptoe through, afraid to make noise while Richard worked. She used to think the silence meant professionalism. Now she understood it was secrecy. Sarah helped her slowly stand. "You ready? Let's get out of this place." Emily nodded, but as they crossed the living room, she paused. Her eyes drifted to the framed wedding photo on the wall, her in white, beaming. Richard smiling like a man who had already decided how much of her he would own. She turned away. "Wait," Sarah said softly. "Do you want to take anything?" Emily looked around. The chandeliers, the marble floors, the glass walls, the designer decor. All the things people envied. All the things that had cost her freedom. "No," she whispered. "None of this is mine. I never belonged here." Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "Then let's go home." They stepped toward the elevator. As they passed Olivia, Emily hesitated. The other woman looked up, eyes swollen, face streaked with tears. "I'm sorry," Olivia whispered. Emily wasn't sure how to feel. Anger, pity, relief, betrayal, gratitude. All of it swirled together in a confusing storm. "You helped them," Emily said softly. "That matters." Olivia nodded, crying again. "He scared me. He said if anyone found out, he'd ruin my life. And I believed him. Because he could. Because he already was." She swallowed. "He told me you were cold, difficult, unloving, that you didn't care about him. I believed him because he made it easy to believe whatever he wanted." Emily looked at her a long moment. "He made me believe a lot of things too." Then, gently, "But you need to stop letting men like him decide who you are." Olivia broke into more tears. The paramedic stepped closer, ready to help. Emily gave a small, tired nod and stepped into the elevator with Sarah. When the doors closed, Emily finally exhaled. She felt the tension leave her chest, leaving behind an ache so deep she wasn't sure she'd ever fully feel normal again. Inside the elevator, Sarah wrapped an arm around her. "We're going straight to my place. I'll make you something warm. We'll call Mom and Dad and Daniel. He'll help us figure out the next steps." Emily nodded, wiping her cheeks. "I don't want to be a burden." "Stop," Sarah said firmly. "You've been carrying everything alone for years. Let us carry you for a while." When they reached the lobby, the doorman stared in shock at the sight of officers, handcuffed millionaire, and evidence boxes. Emily kept her head down. She didn't want sympathy. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to disappear. Outside, the fall air hit her cheeks, cool and sharp. Sarah's old Toyota waited at the curb, a stark contrast to Richard's Mercedes. But tonight, it felt like a lifeboat. Emily sank into the passenger seat slowly, protecting her belly. Sarah climbed in and started the engine. As they drove away from the glittering towers of Manhattan, Emily stared out the window. The city lights blurred past like streaks of gold and white. Beautiful, distant, cold. "Em," Sarah said softly, "we're going to get you through this. I promise." Emily turned to her sister, eyes still raw. "I don't even know who I am without him." Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand. "Then we'll find out together." Emily rested her head against the window as the city faded behind them. She didn't know what her future looked like. She didn't know how to rebuild. She didn't know how to raise a baby alone. But she did know one thing. She would rather face the unknown than ever go back to the life she had just escaped. Sarah's apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a narrow living room with mismatched furniture, but to Emily, it felt like a refuge. Warm lights, a soft blanket on the couch, the faint smell of laundry detergent instead of expensive candles. It wasn't luxury, it was life. Sarah made her tea while Emily eased herself onto the couch, one hand rubbing slow circles over her belly. Everything felt foreign, her body, her thoughts, her freedom. "Tea," Sarah said, placing the mug into her hands. "Sip slowly." Emily held it but didn't drink. Her eyes blurred again. How did my life become this? How did I not see what he was doing to me? Sarah sat beside her. Because you loved him, and he used that love to blind you to things you weren't ready to see. Emily swallowed hard. I thought I was safe. I thought, once the baby came, maybe he'd soften. Sarah shook her head. Emily, He wasn't going to soften. Men like him don't get better, they just get bolder. The baby moved again, and Emily pressed her lips together to keep from crying. Sarah took her hand. Listen. Tomorrow, we call Daniel. He's the best family lawyer I know. He'll help you get legal protection. You won't face any of this alone. Emily nodded slowly. I'm scared of everything. Court. Money. Having the baby. Raising her alone. You're not alone, Sarah said. You have me. You have Mom, Dad, and Daniel will make sure Richard can't get anywhere near you. Emily breathed shakily. Do you think he'll still try to hurt me? Even from prison? Sarah's face hardened. He won't get the chance. And even if he tried, look what happened tonight. People believe you now. You're not invisible anymore. For the first time, Emily felt something like relief. Later that night, when Sarah went to her room, Emily sat quietly in the living room, lights dimmed, hands folded protectively over her belly. The world outside the window was calmer here, quiet streets, distant sirens, the hum of the refrigerator. Not the glamorous Manhattan skyline she once thought meant success. She was startled when her phone buzzed beside her. A message. From an unknown number. For a moment, fear coiled in her stomach. But when she opened it, her breath caught. It was from Detective Harris. Mrs. Cole, we've uncovered more documents. Your husband planned long-term financial isolation. You were the target of significant coercive control. I want you to know. You did the right thing by refusing to sign. Emily stared at the message, tears gathering again, not from pain this time, but from validation. She typed back slowly. Thank you. I didn't think anyone would believe me. A minute later, he replied, we see this more than you think. And tonight, you were brave. Emily set the phone down, letting the words settle into her bones. Brave. No one had ever called her that before. She shifted on the couch, pulled the blanket over herself, and whispered to her unborn daughter, You're safe now, I promise. For the first time in months, Emily fell asleep without fear. And somewhere deep inside her, a small seed of strength finally began to grow. The next morning, Sarah made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and warm oatmeal. Emily ate slowly, still sore, still exhausted, but the food was comforting. Human. Real. Not the plated perfection of Richard's penthouse dinners. At 9:14 a.m., Sarah's phone buzzed. It's Daniel, she said, eyes lighting up. He's on his way. Emily felt her heart jump. She knew Daniel had met him at family gatherings. Quiet, steady, kind. A childhood friend of Sarah's, who had become a respected lawyer in Brooklyn. He always smiled at Emily, always asked about her health during pregnancy. But she had never imagined needing him like this. When he arrived, he stepped inside with a gentle knock. Hi, Emily, he said softly. I came as soon as I heard what happened. Emily tried to stand, but he held up a hand. No, please. Sit. You've been through enough. He sat across from her, opening his briefcase. Sarah told me everything, but I want to hear it from you. At your pace. Emily took a deep breath. He tried to make me sign something last night. Something I didn't understand. Power of attorney? Daniel asked. Emily nodded. And he said if I didn't, I'd be alone. Pregnant, with nothing. Her voice cracked, and I believed him. Because he controlled everything. Money, decisions. Even what friends I could see. Daniel's expression tightened. Not pity anger. Controlled, focused anger. The kind lawyers used to dismantle men like Richard. Emily, he said gently, what Richard did is illegal. Coercion, fraud, financial manipulation. You did the right thing by refusing to sign. But I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know he was hiding money. That's exactly why he wanted your signature, Daniel said. And that's why the state will protect you. Sarah touched Emily's shoulder. We're with you, Em. Daniel flipped open a folder. I've already filed for an emergency protective order. Richard will not be allowed to contact you, approach you, or send anyone to talk to you. Emily blinked. He can't call me? No, Daniel said. Not legally. And if he tries, even once, He goes straight back to jail. A breath Emily didn't know she'd been holding escaped her chest. Daniel continued, voice warm but firm. Next, we'll file for temporary full custody. Given the circumstances, pregnancy, abuse, coercion, you will be granted it without question. Emily stared at him, tears welling. I thought I'd lose everything. Emily, Daniel said softly, leaning forward. You're not the one who should be afraid. Richard is. Her lips parted in shock. Sarah grinned. Told you he was good. Daniel smiled faintly. When the financial investigation is complete, we'll pursue your share of the marital assets. Everything he tried to hide, every dollar he tried to sneak out of the marriage, it all comes back to you and your baby. Emily pressed a hand to her chest. I don't want his money. I just want to be safe. You will be, Daniel said, but safety also means stability. You deserve financial security after everything he stole from you. Emily's eyes softened. Thank you, Daniel. He hesitated, then added more quietly, You don't have to thank me. I'm just glad you're finally getting out. Emily tilted her head. You knew? Daniel exhaled. I suspected. I saw the way you flinched when people raised their voices. The way you never answered your phone when Richard was nearby. The way you stopped smiling. He swallowed. But I couldn't help until you were ready. Emily felt something inside her shift. A warm, fragile feeling she didn't have a name for yet. Daniel closed his briefcase and stood. I'll be back later with the paperwork. Try to rest. Let Sarah take care of you for now. As he reached the door, he paused. Emily, you're stronger than you think. She looked down at her belly, then back at him. For the first time, she whispered, I'm starting to believe that. Daniel smiled a small, hopeful smile before stepping out. Emily leaned back on the couch, the morning light warming her face. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was beginning to rebuild. The following days felt unreal. Emily stayed in Sarah's small apartment, wrapped in quiet and safety, while the world outside churned with the fallout of Richard's arrest. News spread quickly. Local headlines featured his name, photos of him being escorted by officers, and bold captions reading, Manhattan real estate mogul charged with fraud. Reporters camped outside his penthouse, snapping pictures of every NYPD officer carrying out box after box of evidence. Emily didn't watch the news, but Sarah did. She studied every update carefully, shielding Emily from the harshest details. But some things couldn't be shielded. By the third day, Detective Harris called. Mrs. Cole, he said gently, I want to let you know we found more than we expected. Emily sat straighter on the couch. More. Financial documents showing asset concealment, tax evasion, and an attempt to transfer joint property into untraceable accounts. It's clear he intended to leave you with nothing. Emily closed her eyes. She had known he was controlling, but this level of betrayal felt like a punch to the chest. Detective Harris continued. We also found emails between him and a private investigator he hired months ago. A private investigator, Emily whispered. Why? To monitor your movements, Harris said gravely. Your appointments, your outings, your purchases. He tracked everything. Emily felt cold. Why would he do that? Because he wanted to ensure you didn't speak to a lawyer or discover what he was doing financially. He was preparing for a divorce long before you did. Her stomach tightened. He always said I was clingy, paranoid, that I didn't trust him. Harris sighed. That's called gaslighting. It's common in coercive control cases. Emily stared at the floor, her heart aching with a grief deeper than anger. She hadn't been imagining things. She hadn't been overreacting. She had been living inside a trap. Detective, she asked softly, will he get out on bail? That's what I called about, he said. His bail was denied. Emily blinked. Why? We presented evidence of flight risk, Harris explained. He attempted to wire funds internationally the night of his arrest. He also tried to delete files. And given the domestic abuse concerns, he paused. The court determined he's safer in custody. Emily released a long, shaky breath. Sarah reached over, squeezing her knee. Harris added, You don't need to be afraid of him right now. Focus on yourself and your baby. After they hung up, Emily sat silently for a moment. Her hands trembled in her lap. Sarah sat beside her. "Say something, Em." Emily swallowed hard. "He planned everything. He planned to discard me like I was nothing." "No," Sarah said firmly. "He planned to use you. That's worse. But his plans failed." Emily wiped her eyes. "I trusted him with everything. My money, my career, my life. He twisted all of it." Sarah leaned closer. "But look what you did. You refused to sign. You broke the cycle. You saved yourself and your daughter." Emily felt tears building again, but they weren't from fear this time. They were from the strange, trembling strength rising inside her. Later that evening, Daniel visited with legal papers. He reviewed each page with calm precision, making sure Emily understood every detail. "You're safe legally," he assured her. "The court sees the pattern clearly. You're protected." Emily nodded. "Detective Harris said Richard can't get bail." Daniel's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Good. That means he can't manipulate the situation from the outside." Emily breathed out. "Daniel, everything I believed about my marriage was a lie." Daniel softened. "No. He lied. You trusted. That's not the same." Emily looked down at her belly, feeling the baby shift. "I'm scared," she whispered. Daniel placed his hand gently on top of hers, carefully, respectfully. "You don't have to be. Not anymore." Emily swallowed a sob, her heart cracking open, this time not from pain, but relief. Sarah, watching from the kitchen, smiled quietly. In the middle of the wreckage of her old life, Emily realized she was slowly, painfully, beautifully stepping into a new one. A week later, Daniel drove Emily to her first formal meeting with the legal team. She sat in the passenger seat of his car, hands resting on her belly, anxiety curling in her stomach like a fist. The city moved outside the window, ordinary people living ordinary lives, while Emily felt like she had stepped into someone else's existence. "You're quiet," Daniel said softly, glancing at her between stoplights. "I don't know what they'll ask," she admitted. "I don't know if I can say it all out loud." Daniel nodded. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest," Emily sighed. "Honesty was never allowed with Richard. Whenever I tried to talk about how I felt, he punished you," Daniel finished gently. Emily nodded, tears threatening again. "I still feel like I'm doing something wrong." Daniel parked the car. "Emily, listen to me. You're the victim here. The court will see that. The evidence is overwhelming. You survived something most people can't even imagine." Emily pressed her lips together to keep them from trembling. "I don't feel strong." Daniel smiled softly. "Strength isn't a feeling. It's something others see in you long before you notice it." She didn't reply, but her chest warmed faintly at the words. Inside the law office, a team of 2 attorneys and a paralegal greeted her. They spoke gently, clearly, breaking down legal terms into words she could understand. They asked her questions about Richard's behavior, his control of money, restrictions he put on her movements, his manipulation. Emily hesitated at first, but the more she spoke, the more the truth spilled out. Memories she had pushed deep down resurfaced like bruises rising to the skin. "How did he treat you when you got pregnant?" one attorney asked. Emily swallowed tightly. "He was angry when he found out it was a girl." Daniel's jaw clenched beside her. Another attorney asked, "Did he ever threaten you?" Emily nodded slowly. He said if I ever tried to leave him, he'd make sure I left with nothing." "And did he ever physically harm you?" Emily hesitated longer this time. The shame was heavy, wet, suffocating. "He grabbed me, pushed me. Once he threw a glass. It shattered near my feet." The attorneys exchanged glances, grim ones. The paralegal added, "Given your pregnancy, those actions are considered aggravated in court." Emily felt her pulse race. "I never thought anyone would believe me." Daniel placed his hand lightly on the table near hers, not touching, but close enough to anchor her. "They believe you now." When the meeting ended, one attorney said, "Mrs. Cole, this case isn't just about divorce. It's about justice." Emily felt a shiver run through her. As they walked back to the car, She stopped suddenly on the sidewalk. "Daniel," she whispered, "was our marriage always doomed? Was I just blind?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "You were hopeful, and hopeful people don't see monsters until they have no choice but to." Emily looked down, tears slipping from her eyes. Daniel gently touched her elbow. "Hey, look at you. You're here. You're fighting. Richard didn't break you. He thought he did, but he didn't." She closed her eyes, letting the tears fall freely. Daniel waited. Patient. Steady. When she breathed again, she nodded. "Okay, I'm ready to keep fighting." They walked to the car, Daniel holding the door for her. As she settled into the seat, she whispered to her unborn daughter, "We're going to be okay." And for the first time, she believed it. But she had no idea that another blow, another truth was waiting around the corner, ready to shake her all over again. A month passed. Emily's belly grew rounder, her steps slower, her breaths deeper. But her spirit, fragile but rebuilding, grew stronger each day. Meanwhile, Richard's downfall unfolded fast and brutally. His real estate company, Cole Luxury Holdings, was seized by federal authorities. Every asset was frozen. Business partners distanced themselves publicly. Employees resigned in waves. Investors demanded answers. Banks revoked credit lines. Properties were placed under investigation. The empire Richard flaunted for years collapsed like wet paper. Headlines called him the Manhattan fraudster, a millionaire built on lies, the real estate king who lost his crown. Emily tried not to read the articles, but sometimes they slipped onto her screen anyway. Each time, she saw a man she barely recognized, someone who looked more like a stranger than the husband she once loved. One afternoon, Daniel came by with a thick envelope. "What's this?" Emily asked. "Official report," Daniel said gently. "It's everything they uncovered." Emily opened it slowly. Inside were photos of Richard's secret accounts, transaction histories, documents with forged signatures, hers, plans to transfer all marital assets to foreign companies, emails to Olivia instructing her how to move funds illegally, and then a printout of a conversation between Richard and his accountant. "Once she signs the forms, she's done. I'll give her the apartment in Brooklyn to keep her quiet. I'm not paying alimony to a woman who does nothing." Emily's stomach twisted. "He thought I was nothing." Daniel shook his head. "He thought you were powerless." "That's different." Emily's breath trembled. "I spent years loving a man who used me as a tool." Sarah, who had been listening from the kitchen, came over and wrapped her arm around her. "People like him don't understand love, Em. They understand control." Emily wiped her tears. "I'm glad he's losing everything. But I wish it didn't hurt so much." Daniel lowered his voice. "It hurts because you're human, because what you gave was real." Emily covered her face, crying softly. "He didn't just betray me, he betrayed our daughter." Daniel's expression softened even more. "Kids don't need two parents. They need one good parent, one safe parent. That's you." Emily looked up, her eyes wet but determined. "What happens next?" Daniel sat beside her. "Richard's trial date is set. With the evidence, he'll be convicted. Likely a long sentence. What about his money? Most of it will go to the government. But anything that's legally marital property, you'll receive your share. And because of the abuse, the court will prioritize your financial safety." Emily nodded slowly. "So, he loses everything." "Yes," Daniel said. "This is what happens when a man destroys his own life." Emily exhaled, feeling something in her chest finally release. That night, after Daniel left, Emily stepped onto the small balcony. The Brooklyn skyline stretched quietly before her, not grand, not flashy, but comforting in its simplicity. She whispered to her baby, "He can't hurt us anymore." The baby shifted gently, like a reply. Inside, Sarah called her phone. "Em, you got another message. It's from the detective." Emily walked inside, took the phone, and read the new update. Richard's mother filed a statement claiming he's mentally unstable. They're trying to reduce sentencing, but the court saw through it. He will stand trial, and you will testify. Emily's breath halted. Testify. Face him. Sarah touched her shoulder. You can do this, Em. You're stronger than he ever believed. Emily nodded slowly. I have to do it. For my baby. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, her heart beat with quiet courage. Richard was falling, and Emily, for the first time, was rising. The courthouse loomed tall and intimidating, its stone pillars casting long shadows across the steps. Emily stood at the bottom, clutching her small purse in one hand and pressing the other protectively over her now very round belly. Daniel stood beside her in a navy suit, radiating calm. You ready? Emily swallowed. No, but I'm going in anyway. Sarah hugged her tightly before rushing to find a seat inside. We'll be right behind you. Emily breathed deeply and walked forward, each step heavy but deliberate. The courthouse doors opened, revealing a corridor buzzing with reporters, officers, lawyers, and families caught in their own storms. Flashbulbs sparked. Questions flew. Mrs. Cole, do you have a statement? How do you feel about your husband's charges? Did he force you to sign documents? Are you afraid of him? Emily kept her gaze forward, Daniel shielding her from the chaos as they moved down the hall. Inside the courtroom, everything felt colder. Rows of benches, a judge's high seat, a witness stand. The air carried the faint smell of old wood and tension, and there he was, Richard. He sat at the defense table in a prison-issued jumpsuit, wrists cuffed, face pale and gaunt. The confident businessman, the man who once strutted through Manhattan with arrogance, was gone. What remained was a hollow version of him. Emily froze. Daniel stepped closer. Do you want to sit? We can wait until they call your name. No, she whispered. I need to see him like this. Richard lifted his head slowly, eyes searching the room. When he saw her, something flickered across his face, shock, anger, disbelief. She met his gaze calmly. Gone was the terrified wife who flinched when he raised his voice. Gone was the woman he controlled, manipulated, and silenced. She stood taller now, belly full of life, heart full of strength. Richard scowled. His lips moved. You ruined me. Emily did not look away. The judge entered. All rise. They took their seats. The prosecution began presenting evidence. Account records, emails, voice messages, a timeline of abuse, a pattern of control. Emily listened, hands trembling in her lap, as every lie he told unraveled. Then came the moment she feared. Mrs. Emily Cole, please take the stand. Daniel helped her rise. She walked slowly to the witness chair, her heart thudding loudly. The bailiff swore her in. She sat, palms damp, pulse quickening. The prosecutor offered a gentle smile. Mrs. Cole, can you tell the court what happened the night of October 14th? Emily inhaled, and she spoke. She told them about the dinner, the phone call, the screaming, the wrist pain, the forced documents, the threat, the fear for her unborn daughter. Her voice cracked, but she did not break. She described the years of control. Passwords changed, bank accounts closed, friends pushed away, careers stolen. She spoke of emotional wounds deeper than physical ones, of lying awake at night praying he would be kinder in the morning. The room was silent. Even Richard's attorney didn't interrupt. When she finished, her eyes filled not with tears, but with relief. The prosecutor nodded. Thank you. No further questions. Then, Richard's lawyer stood. Mrs. Cole, he said, surely you are emotional due to your pregnancy. Daniel stood instantly. Objection. Sustained, the judge said sharply. Move on. The lawyer tried a weaker angle. Did your husband ever explicitly threaten your life? Emily met his gaze. He didn't have to. He threatened my freedom, my future, my baby. That's enough. A murmur rippled across the courtroom. The lawyer backed down. No further questions. Emily stepped down from the stand, her legs trembling, but Daniel steadied her. They sat together as the judge reviewed the charges. Minutes passed like hours. And then the judge spoke. Richard Cole is found guilty on all counts. Gasps filled the room. Richard slammed his fists on the table. Emily, you did this. You ruined. Remove him, the judge ordered. Officers grabbed him as he shouted, but Emily watched calmly. He was powerless, truly powerless. As they dragged him away, Emily whispered to herself, You ruined yourself. Daniel turned to her. It's over. Emily exhaled, her whole body softening. "No," she said gently, "it's just beginning." Outside those courthouse doors, a new life waited, and she was finally ready to walk into it. Winter settled over Brooklyn like a soft gray blanket, bringing cold mornings and warm lights glowing from apartment windows. Emily's belly had grown full and heavy, every step slower, every breath deeper. She spent her evenings sitting by Sarah's small living room window, watching snowflakes drift past the glass, wondering how something so peaceful could exist after everything she had survived. A month after the trial, life felt different, not easy, but steady, safe. And each day she felt her daughter stronger inside her, kicking with a gentle insistence that reminded her she wasn't alone. One morning, while Sarah was at work, Emily made herself tea and sat wrapped in a blanket. Her phone buzzed on the table. Daniel's name lit up the screen. She answered softly, "Hi." His warm voice filled her ear. "Just checking on you. How are you and the little one?" Emily smiled faintly. "She's restless today. Maybe she knows I barely slept." "You want company?" he asked gently. "I'm close by." She hesitated. A month ago, she would have said no, afraid to depend on anyone. But Daniel had been a constant presence, steady, patient, never pushing too far. And now, hearing his voice made something in her chest loosen. "Yes," she whispered. "I'd like that." Within 20 minutes, he knocked. She opened the door, and he stepped inside, brushing snow from his coat, cheeks flushed from the cold. "You look tired," he said softly. "I am." She sank into the couch. "I keep thinking about the baby, about raising her, about everything that comes after." Daniel sat beside her, not too close, but close enough to feel comforting. "You're not doing it alone," he said. "You have Sarah, your parents, and me." Emily looked down at her hands. "I'm not used to people wanting to help without wanting something in return." Daniel's voice softened even more. "Emily, you deserve care that doesn't come with conditions." Her throat tightened. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever trust again." "You will," he said, slowly. "And not because someone deserves it, but because you deserve peace." Emily blinked back tears. Before she could speak, a sharp pain tightened across her abdomen. She flinched, gripping the couch. Daniel leaned forward instantly. "Emily, what's wrong?" I don't know," she gasped. Another wave of pain rolled through her, stronger this time. I think it's happening." Daniel's eyes widened, but his voice remained calm. Okay. Breathe. We're going to the hospital." He helped her stand and grabbed her coat. She clung to his arm as another contraction tightened her belly. Fear flickered through her, fear of the pain, fear of the unknown, fear of doing this without a husband at her side. But then she remembered. A husband didn't make a family. Love did. Safety did. Choice did. Daniel helped her down the stairs slowly, keeping his hands steady on her back. Snowflakes fell gently around them as he opened the car door and helped her inside. The drive to the hospital was a blur of streetlights and deep breaths, Daniel murmuring calm instructions beside her. "Just breathe, Emily. You're doing great." When they arrived, nurses rushed her to a delivery room. The contractions grew stronger, waves of pain breaking across her body. She held Daniel's hand, squeezing without realizing how hard. He didn't flinch. "Emily," he whispered, brushing hair from her forehead. "You're not alone. I promise." Hours passed. Nurses came and went. The doctor checked her, encouraging her. Then finally, after a long, breathless push, a baby's cry filled the room. Emily's heart broke open. The nurse placed a tiny, warm baby girl on her chest. Emily sobbed, holding her daughter close. The baby's small fingers curled around her skin, and everything inside her melted. "She's perfect," Emily whispered. Daniel stood nearby, tears shining in his eyes. And for the first time in her life, Emily felt an emotion so overwhelming, so undeniable, she trembled. Hope, pure and bright and real, born in the same moment as her daughter. The hospital room was quiet as morning light filtered through the blinds. Emily lay propped against pillows, her baby nestled softly in her arms. She watched her daughter's sleep, tiny chest rising and falling, little lips making soft sucking motions, fingers curled into fists like she was preparing to take on the world. Emily had named her Grace, a name that captured everything she wanted her child to grow into: strength, kindness, softness, courage. A name she hoped would define a life very different from the one Emily had lived. Sarah rushed in with flowers and tears. "She's beautiful," she whispered, leaning over the bed. I'm so proud of you." Emily smiled tiredly. "I didn't do it alone." Sarah's eyes flicked to Daniel, sitting in the corner with a gentle smile on his face. "No," she agreed softly. "You didn't." Emily glanced at him too. He looked different today, more open, more vulnerable. He had stayed the entire night, only stepping out when nurses asked. He didn't push, didn't assume, he just stayed because she needed him. Later, when Sarah went to get coffee, Daniel stood and approached the bed. "May I?" he asked, eyes on the baby. Emily nodded and placed Grace carefully into his arms. He held her with surprising ease, supporting her head, smiling softly down at her. "She looks like you," he said. Emily laughed quietly. "I hope she gets more from you than from me." Daniel looked up, surprised. "Emily, don't say that. You're stronger than you know. Grace is lucky to have you." Emily looked away, swallowing. "I'm just scared. Everything is changing so fast." "That's how new beginnings are," Daniel said. "Terrifying, but worth it." Emily watched him gently rock Grace, speaking to her in a soft voice, promising her a world she hadn't yet seen. Something in Emily's chest warmed a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to even imagine. Not yet. Not fully. Not while the past still lingered like a shadow. A knock interrupted her thoughts. A social worker entered, holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Cole," she said kindly, "I'm here with an update on the protective order and custody arrangements." Emily tensed instinctively. Daniel moved closer, ready to support her. "The social worker Saturday, given the abuse, the coercion, and the trial outcome, the court has granted you full legal and physical custody of Grace. Richard is barred from any contact indefinitely. If he ever requests visitation, it will be denied while he's incarcerated." Emily let out a shaky breath. "Thank you," the social worker smiled. "You've been through more than most people face in a lifetime, but you did everything right." After she left, Emily stared at Grace again, absorbing her tiny features. "Full custody," she whispered. The words felt like a balm, a shield, a promise. Daniel placed a hand gently on the bed rail. "Emily, you're safe. She's safe. It's over." Emily shook her head slowly. "It's not over. It's just different." Daniel hesitated, then asked softly, "Are you thinking about the future?" Emily blinked. "I don't know what the future looks like." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then we'll figure it out together." She looked at him a long moment, at the steadiness in his eyes, the gentleness in his hands, the warmth in his smile. He didn't try to replace anything. He didn't rush. He didn't force her into anything she wasn't ready for. He waited, and for the first time in years, Emily felt safe with a man, truly safe. As Grace stirred, Emily whispered to her, "We're going to make a good life, you and I." Grace opened her eyes, soft, curious, trusting, and Emily realized something startling. This wasn't the end of a painful story. It was the beginning of the life she deserved. While Emily healed and bonded with Grace, far from the chaos, Richard's world collapsed in ways even he couldn't have imagined. Inside the stark, gray walls of the federal detention center, Richard paced his small cell, rage twisting his features. His arrogance, the armor he had worn his entire life, began to crack. Other inmates whispered about him. Guards kept their distance. The man who once commanded boardrooms now ate off plastic trays, slept on a thin mattress, and lined up for roll call like everyone else. But the worst part, the part that hollowed him from the inside, was realizing that no one was coming for him. Not his powerful friends. Not his business partners. Not even his parents, who had finally stopped answering his calls. He spent hours obsessively replaying the trial in his mind. Emily's voice, her calm strength, her refusal to crumble. To think, he snarled to himself, she couldn't even speak without crying before. Now she thinks she's better than me? He punched the wall, skin splitting across his knuckles. Pain shot through his hand sharp, unforgiving. He hissed and pulled back. An officer approached. "Cole, medical unit, now." Richard gritted his teeth as he was escorted down the hallway. Months passed. The sentencing hearing arrived. He stood before the judge, wrists chained, face gaunt and hollow. The courtroom was half full. Reporters, lawyers, a few strangers. But not Emily, not Daniel, not Sarah, not a single person who once cared about him. The prosecutor read the list of charges: fraud, laundering, coercion, asset concealment, domestic abuse, falsification of documents, and then handed over evidence Emily had never seen: shuffled papers, bank transfers, emails dripping with manipulation. Then came the sentence. "Richard Cole, for your crimes, you are hereby sentenced to 12 years in federal prison with no possibility of early release." The room gasped. Richard's knees buckled. He clung to the table edge, mouth falling open. "No. No, that's impossible. I'm Richard Cole. I built half this city. The judge cut him off. "You built your success on lies, and now you will pay for them." When officers dragged him from the courtroom, he screamed Emily's name, rage, desperation, madness, all tangled. "Emily, you did this. You ruined me." But she wasn't there to hear him. Instead, she was at home in Brooklyn, rocking Grace gently in her arms, humming a soft melody. The world was quiet, warm, safe, and miles away, Richard sat alone in a cell, bitterness devouring him. Over the next months, his health deteriorated. Stress ravaged his body. He developed severe stomach issues, then liver problems. Doctors warned him to stop drinking the cheap prison alcohol some inmates brewed, but he ignored them. His hair thinned, his posture slumped, his eyes dulled. He refused to accept blame. Instead, he clung to one thought: this is all Emily's fault. But inside the loneliness of his cell, there were nights, quiet, brutal nights, when he saw flashes of the truth. Emily crying in the kitchen. Emily apologizing for things she didn't do. Emily shrinking every time he raised his voice. Emily loving him long after he stopped deserving it. Sometimes, in those dark hours, he whispered to an empty room, "What did I do?" But the guilt never stayed long. His pride always returned. His blame always resurfaced. 4 years passed. Disease wore him down. His wealth disappeared. His properties were auctioned. His name became a cautionary tale. He wrote angry letters to Emily, letters that were never delivered because of the protective order. They piled up in an unsent heap on his cell floor. He rotted, and miles away, Emily thrived. One life crumbled, another flourished. For the first time, justice felt not only real, but complete. 4 years later, spring bloomed across Long Island. Soft breezes drifted through the open windows of a cozy seaside home, where Emily now lived with Grace, a charming cottage with white shutters, a small garden, and sunlight streaming into every corner. Grace, now a giggling 3-year-old with curls and bright eyes, ran across the living room holding a stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, Mommy, look what I drew." Emily knelt, admiring the messy crayon drawing. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." A warm voice drifted from the kitchen. "She gets her art skills from you." Emily turned, smiling at Daniel as he walked in carrying 2 mugs of tea. He placed one in front of her and leaned down to kiss her forehead, a gesture he always did gently, like an invitation she could accept or decline. She accepted it now. Always. Life with Daniel was different from anything she had known. Slow, safe, steady. He never raised his voice, never rushed her, never made her feel small. He loved Grace as if she were his own, and Grace adored him, calling him Dan in her sweet little voice. Outside, a soft breeze carried the scent of the ocean. Their lives were quiet but rich in ways money never could measure. That afternoon, as they sat on the porch watching Grace chase bubbles, Daniel reached for Emily's hand. "You've been quiet today," he said softly. Emily shrugged. "Just thinking." "About him?" She paused. "A little. I heard he's sick. Very sick." Daniel nodded. His choices caught up to him. Emily looked down at her tea. "I don't hate him anymore. I thought I would. But I don't. I just feel sorry for the version of myself who loved him." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. That woman was doing her best. Emily looked out at Grace dancing in the yard. I used to think surviving him made me broken. And now? And now I think it made me brave. Daniel's eyes softened. You're the bravest person I know. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to Grace's laughter, a sound that still brought tears to Emily's eyes. After a while, Daniel cleared his throat. I've been wanting to ask you something. Her heart fluttered. What is it? He reached into his pocket, not pulling out a ring, but a small silver key. This is to the spare room I've been fixing up, he said. You know, the one with the big window. I want you and Grace to make it yours, officially. Emily blinked. Daniel. He took a breath. I'm not asking for anything in return. I'm not asking you to rush. I just want to build a life with you, however long it takes. You and Grace, you're my family. Emily felt tears rise warm, grateful tears that healed instead of hurt. She took the key slowly, fingers trembling. Daniel, you already are our family. He pulled her gently into his arms, holding her, steady and safe. Grace ran over, climbing into their laps, giggling as they wrapped her in a warm embrace. Emily looked out at the ocean, the waves rolling gently, the horizon glowing gold under the afternoon Sunday. She thought about the girl she used to be, the fear she lived in, the night everything shattered, the baby born from chaos, the courage she found piece by piece. Now she stood at the edge of a life she built herself, filled with safety, love, laughter, and possibility. She whispered, more to herself than anyone, I made it. Daniel kissed her temple. Grace snuggled closer. And in that moment, Emily finally felt it completely. She was free. She was loved. And she had won. So the story closes here, my wonderful friends. And if you're still with me at this moment, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in its own quiet way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength, or of a time you survived something you never thought you could. Emily's path teaches us a truth the Stoics have whispered for centuries. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Real strength begins within. Her healing shows us that the first step to freedom is choosing not to live in fear, and the next is believing you deserve peace. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, what stands in the way becomes the way. The pain she faced didn't end her. It shaped her into someone stronger, calmer, and more alive. And that same strength lives in you too. If this story gave you courage, clarity, or even just a moment of reflection, then don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel, because somewhere out there, someone is waiting for a story that helps them remember their worth, just like this one helped you tonight. Let's heal together.